Today I'm going to be working on my 2004 Land Rover Discovery 2. These early Discoveries came with a center locking differential, and if you've ever heard the expression, if you don't use it, you'll lose it, well, that's what happens to the locking differential on these Discoveries. The linkage becomes locked up and you're unable to engage the locking differential. So in today's video, I'm gonna get the center locking diff's linkage functioning properly again so I can hit the trails without worrying about getting stuck. So let's get into it on Rebuild Revival. To access the top of the transfer case where the linkage is, obviously you've got the shifter here in the center console, so we need to remove the center console to get to the linkage underneath. Here's a quick time lapse of me removing the center console. If you don't want to watch, just skip ahead to about 2 minutes. So there's a plate right here that is normally riveted in, but I've already had this plate removed, so I went back in with Phillips screws. So now we'll just pull these Phillips out. All right, so here is the shifter for the transfer case. One cable, this one here, goes to the diff lock, and the other cable down here goes to the actual transfer case for high and low. So this is the cable we're going to be working on right now, and if you follow it, this cable ends up right here. That part right there is the end of the cable for the diff lock, and we're going to be removing that from the transfer case and hopefully freeing up that linkage that is inside of the transfer case. I disconnected the cable from the shifter, and now I want to remove the bracket that holds the cable down there. Okay. All right, now we're going to take this 13mm nut off that holds this little lever. Look at that. That's shifting. Huh. Since that little lever is moving down there, which means the locking mechanism in the diff is working, this is the shifter cable. You can see it's free. I think I'm still going to remove it just to lube it up inside. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled the shifter cable out just to make sure it was free, and it is moving like super easy. I don't know why this thing wasn't shifting the CDL, but I cleaned up the little shifter mechanism fork. There was one O-ring that I replaced on the inside. I didn't have this size O-ring, so I wasn't able to replace that, but the little one on the inside I replaced. Cleaned it all up. It's moving really nicely. And then I just put a little bit of this cable lube on each end and moved it in and out a bunch of times, but this thing was already very free to begin with, so I'm not sure why it wasn't shifting. But the transfer case itself was really hard to move it into low and high and neutral. So I am going to pull the shifter mechanism out of the transfer case as well while I'm in here and make sure that is all free and shifting properly. All right, so instead of taking the whole shifter mechanism apart off of the top of the transfer case, this is what I did. There's the shift lever right there. That's the shift cable coming from the shifter for the high-low in the transfer case. Where I've got this PB blaster going into is the vent. This is the vent hose here. That goes in the top. The shift lever has a rod that goes that way. This is what it looks like if you were to remove the shift linkage from the transfer case. This is the hole where that vent line comes from, and my nozzle would be pointing in this direction over here, spraying towards the linkage where this guy's fingers are. I sprayed some PB Blaster a couple of times while shifting this in and out, and I've got the transmission in neutral. As I'm doing that, I'm also rocking the car back and forth and just shifting this in and out a couple of times. And it is starting to move so much smoother now. So I think I've freed up the linkage inside the transfer case, and I think I'm good. I don't need to take anything else apart. So I've got all of the cables hooked back up how they should be, and I was just going through and testing everything, and I'm not getting any indicator up here that my diff lock is engaged. So there are two switches down in here on top of the transfer case that tell the computer if the diff lock is engaged or not. So I'm going to test those two switches. Okay, so I got one of the switches out. It's where that hole is. This is the other one right here. And I've got it hooked up to the tester right here. Just one lead going in one side and one lead going in the other. So when it's open, it should read this, but then when you push this, it should read some type of resistance. So this switch is bad. I've actually got a new one already, and I'll show you what it should do. So I've got the leads running to it, so it should read open like this, and then when you push it, it should read some type of resistance like that. So this switch is bad, and probably the other one as well, so we're gonna pull them both and swap them. Okay, I just got the second one out, this rear one right here. Make sure you mark them to know which one goes to which plug. I put a little number 1 right next to this hole right there, and then I also put a number 1 on this connector right there, so I know that one goes to there. When I pulled the rear one out, it had a spacer on it, so if yours have any spacers, just make sure you put the same spacer back in where it goes. So I cleaned up the mating surfaces where the sensors go, and actually both of them had little washers or spacers. The other one was just stuck on the transfer case, so I didn't see it. I've got both of those on here, and I put some thread sealant on the threads, so let's go ahead and go back in with these. Here's a look inside of the center locking diff in the transfer case. Here is the shift linkage that goes through the transfer case. This is the selector shaft. Here is the switch that tells the computer if it's engaged or disengaged. Our transfer case has 2 switches. The earlier ones only had 1. While I had the switch removed, I sprayed some PB Blaster down onto the selector shaft, just like I did for the high-low selector. And I also stuck the nozzle in and went this way. So I sprayed it over in this area and in this area while I was engaging and disengaging the center locking diff. This helped free up the linkage even more and made it even smoother to engage and disengage the CDL. All right, so I've got both of the new switches down there installed. You can see both of the new wires coming up. They are plugged in, and the diff lock is disengaged as per where the shifter is. So the light is off. It should be right there. So now I'm going to engage, and the light should come on. And there we go. Now the light is on, so it is working properly. Originally, when I put both of the sensors in the light was not working how it should, I had to back off this front sensor like a quarter turn, and then the light started functioning properly. That spacer has probably smashed a little bit. The threads are really tight on this thing, and I put thread sealant in it, so I don't think it's gonna back out. So now we can put all of this back together because both of our shifters are working how they should. All right, car's running and we are in park. So now we can shift the diff lock over, and you can see the diff lock light comes on. We can also go into neutral here, which that comes on when the transfer case is in neutral, and then we'll go up to low. So now we're in low. So we'll go ahead and take the diff lock off, and we'll go back into high. Now, this does work a little bit better if you're moving a little bit, or you can just kind of rock the car back and forth just to kind of help mesh the linkage while it's shifting. But everything is all good. We've got the center console all back together, so this part is done. Another common issue these Discoveries have are the 3 Amigos. The 3 Amigos refer to 3 warning lights that come on the dash when there's a malfunction in the ABS system. The 3 lights that come on are ABS, traction control, and hill descent. All 3 of those functions stop working when there's an issue with the ABS system, and this Discovery, when I bought it, had the 3 Amigos. This is the fault that was causing my 3 Amigos. And how I fixed that issue is I replaced the ABS module that's attached to the ABS pump. Now, I did that off camera, but here is a replacement pump that actually came inside of the other Discovery that I just bought. The module that I replaced is this one right here. So this is actually the bad one off of my car. And here is the good one that came on the replacement pump. Now you can replace this module without disconnecting any of the brake lines, so you don't have to do any bleeding. So what you need to do is remove this nut here, this one on this side, and the one here on the back side. Once you remove those nuts, you'll be able to lift the whole ABS pump assembly up without removing any of the brake lines. You just kind of bend them out of the way, and I'll link a video on how to do that portion down below. So in my case, once I lifted this up out of the engine bay with the brake line still attached here, I was able to remove this module, but you need to remove the shuttle valve first, which is this portion here. And there are a lot of videos on this, but I figured I would just show you since I've got this out on the bench here. So here's the shuttle valve. It's got wires that you can see here are all bare. The insulation is gone. So this can also be an issue. You've got a plug here that unplugs like that. Then you can just replace the module here. Now, I know I should have filmed this. I just kind of jumped into the project. I wasn't really sure what I was going to have to do to fix it because it could be a lot of different issues. So here's what it looks like on the inside. I was able to just replace this portion and it fixed my issue. Now, there are a lot of different reasons that the 3 Amigos can come up, but this is how I fixed mine. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. The transfer case is now shifting in and out of high and low gear properly, as well as engaging and disengaging the center locking differential. I am going to be taking the Discovery out on a camping trip soon, which is why I'm working on it, and I do have a few more small projects to do before then. So if you like the discovery content, stay tuned for more videos on this coming up shortly. And thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.